Hi, welcome back to Outdoor Exploration. I'm Emily, and today we're going to talk about berries because it is getting to be full-on berry season, although there are many that are ready later in the year too. I decided to split what I'm showing you today up into 5 categories. So we'll talk about rubus, ribus, vaccinium, and Oregon grape, and what am I forgetting? Salal. There are other berries, but that's like the 5 categories that you will find most everywhere. So I'm starting with the salmonberries, which are in the rubus family. Rubus berries generally are those that have many parts. So when you look at a salmonberry, it has all those separate little parts to it. That's a rubus. Some examples that you know very well are blackberries, raspberries, cloudberries. They're not as well known, but and salmonberries. So let's talk about the salmonberry plant as a whole, because actually most of the parts of it, you know, that aren't wood are edible and useful for various things. As you can see here, obviously a deer has been enjoying itself. So the leaves, they're related to raspberry leaves. Obviously it's a rubus family like raspberry and blackberry, and they do have some of the same chemical constituents as raspberry leaves. So people use red raspberry leaf for tea. You can use salmonberry leaves for tea. I don't think they have as many as the raspberry leaves or blackberry leaves, but they do have them, and you can dry them up and make tea. If you have watched some of my earlier videos, a couple of times I mentioned eating salmonberry shoots, which are the new growth, and in the earlier spring it's kind of thick and fleshy and soft, so you can just eat it. These here are what were the new shoots, so they have no berries on them this year. And you can see on this side it's red. They're not all red. But now they're too hard to eat, and they have all their leaves. Earlier in the year they were just a fleshy shoot. So then onto the berries. Salmonberries have all sorts of different colors. So generally there are kind of orange-yellow plants. This is actually, you can see there are both orange and red berries here. It's actually 2 different plants. The red berries grow on some plants and the orange berries grow on others. These are growing quite close to each other in there and kind of have their branches interleaved. But there are all sorts of different colors among them. So the less red ones are just less ripe. There's actually a super dark one up here. Hopefully I can reach it. And then you can have the orange ones, some of which are huge. Let me try and get a nice one. So these are some of the different ones. And the orange berries do usually grow a little bigger. They're a little softer. I find them a little sweeter. But they're all salmonberries and they're all delicious. And yeah, the best thing to do is just put them all in your mouth and eat. Because salmonberries have so many seeds in them, they're not the greatest for cooking into something like a pie. They don't have a huge amount of flavor, so you cook them in and they end up with a lot of water and seeds. They're better eating fresh. I eat them on salads. That's one of my favorite things. So I'm going to take a leaf from this salmonberry plant and head out and find you some more rubus family, and then we can compare the leaves. Let's go. So I have brought with me my salmonberry leaf onto a different rubus plant. This is a black raspberry, and as you can see, if I find an appropriately angled leaf, they're very, very similar. I would say these are a little rounder at the sides. You see the salmonberry leaves have more points on them, but the rest of the plant looks quite different. Excuse me, I'm speared on here. Ow! First of all, if you look up, you can see it's already getting berries. These will turn like a really dark purple, almost black, so hence the name black raspberry. They taste a lot like raspberries. They're totally amazingly delicious if you can beat the birds to them, as always. And if you look at the stem, this is kind of the distinguishing feature. It actually has, well, the younger ones are they're green when they're very young, and they're white down at the bottom, and when they get to be a year or two old, then they have sort of this black, blue, red mottling all up and down them. And that's quite unique to all of this species. The salmonberry branches are woody, the blackberry are all green pretty much, with bits of red, I guess. And this is really this whitey blue color. So that's one way to recognize them. Yeah, that's a black raspberry. So, right here in this particular spot, I have 3 more types of rubus plants. This one is a thimbleberry. Partly recognizable by its very, very soft leaves. And in fact, speaking of leaves, these salmonberry and black raspberry leaves that I brought with me, this is the black raspberry. The thimbleberry leaves actually do look quite different, but you can see the similarity in the younger leaves especially, because they still have the 5 parts to them. And then as they get bigger, they look more open, and then it becomes a little bit less obvious that they're the same, but they still do have those 5 parts. Also, thimbleberries don't have prickles. So, thimbleberries, like raspberries in your garden, get their berries on their 2nd year growth. So this is the 1st year growth. This is this year's, and then over here you can see this older plant that has some remaining flowers you might recognize as similar to blackberry flowers. And these are the beginnings of the little fruits. They're green right now, but they will be red, kind of a dark, bright red, if you can say that. And they're soft like the leaves. They kind of, when they're ripe, that you just sort of turn them upside down, gently touch them, and they'll fall off in your hand. And they're extremely delicious, but they do have a lot of seeds, so people don't usually make jams or pies or things like that with them. I say they have a lot of seeds, but I realize actually all the rubus berries have a lot of seeds. It's just that some have, I guess, larger seeds for the amount of the juicy fruit part than others. So, for example, raspberries, the seeds are actually quite small by comparison to the blobs of actual fruit flesh that you will eat. So it's less of an issue. But yeah, thimbleberries are quite small and have a lot of seeds, but they're delicious. And then beside this here, we have Himalayan blackberries, which are quite prickly. Also behind me, I keep getting poked in the bum by this one. So Himalayan blackberries have the classic 5-leaf shape. I'm going to pick one, hold it up again next to the others. Hold on. Okay, I can use this thimbleberry as a table to show you here. Well, no, maybe my knee is better. So, this is the salmonberry. This is the black raspberry, and on the back you can see the salmonberry is green. The black raspberry is that bluey white color, and this is the the Himalayan blackberry. So it's also white on the back, and if you look closely, the salmonberry often has both of the bottom 4 leaves, how do I say this? Each of the bottom 2 leaves fused so that it looks like one 2-pointed leaf, and the black raspberry usually doesn't. The Himalayan blackberry can have either one. If you look along the stem, you'll find them all different. This one, in fact, has 1 not fused and 1 fused. It's kind of not something you can easily tell them apart by. But what is easy for me to see is that the salmonberry is very kind of jagged looking, and also they're green on the back, as I said, and they have those woody stems that we saw earlier. The black raspberry has these sort of similar to salmonberry, but a little more gentle looking leaves with fewer points on them, and they're white on the back. And then the Himalayan blackberry has these more round leaves, almost like an alder leaf shape. And I'm showing you this so you can see the difference between those and the evergreen blackberry, which I hate, although the berries taste okay. They're the most brutal spiked berry plants we have. And if I find them in my garden, I get them out, which this one is in my garden and will be leaving soon. And look at the difference. It's almost like the leaves are telling you, I'm sharp, I'm going to hurt you. So, and also the blackberries themselves from this plant are, I think, semi-inferior to the Himalayan. Both are invasive, both are not indigenous here. But this one is just brutally sharp and not particularly sweet by comparison to the Himalayan. Although both make rather large, delicious blackberries about this size, which are great for pies and jams, as we all know. And yeah, so I'm going to take this, what's it called? Thimbleberry leaf, and all of these different rubus leaves, and take you to the last rubus that you're likely to find easily over in my salad garden. All right, so now we're in my salad garden, you know, where I have a bunch of weeds growing for my salads mostly. And here I have a trailing blackberry. It's kind of hard to pull it up so you can see it, but hopefully you can see it trails. And this is actually our indigenous blackberry or bramble, and they get much smaller berries than the two introduced ones, the Himalayan and the everbearing, or evergreen, sorry. But they're delicious. I find these the sweetest, most amazing, which is the reason I let them grow in my salad garden, because one of my favorite things to do is cover my salad in fresh blackberries. So yeah, that's that one. And if you look at them, the leaves actually, ow. This is a bit of a brutal episode, so many thorns. The leaves actually mostly only have 3 leaflets on each one. So there's, I don't know how to show you, I have so many here. But if you look along this plant, maybe they all only have 3. I can't remember seeing one with more. But there's nothing particularly exciting to tell you about. I mean, they don't have blue stems, they don't have red stems, although they do have little red parts, but so do Himalayan and evergreen. And yep, they're just smaller and trailing, and you'll usually find them on bluffs and hillsides, kind of disturbed areas similar to other blackberries, although they do thrive in drier places also, and maybe due to the fact that their berries are smaller. So these berries aren't ripe yet. They will turn black, the same color pretty much as the Himalayan and evergreen blackberries, but they're slightly sweeter. So let's move on to the next family. So next I would like to talk about ribus. The ribus family is basically the currant family. So you will know black currants and gooseberries, which, you know, we can buy in the stores, red currants also. This is a wild gooseberry, a black gooseberry. It has no berries this year, unfortunately, and the one that I thought would have berries has seemed to have been killed this year. So this is all I can show you, but as you see, they have these kind of stiff branches. This type is pretty small. A lot of the garden varieties are much bigger, and these little leaves that are maybe similar to a maple leaf in shape, but at least with the gooseberry here, it has many more little jags in it, and they're covered in prickles. Earlier in the spring, they have incredibly dainty little flowers that hang down. Well, this type does. Some other types of wild ribus that we have just have like 3 or so little stems that stick up with flowers on them. These have the little hanging ones like a red currant does. And yeah, they're edible. Unfortunately, that also means you almost never find any in the wild because the birds don't care if they're ripe or not and just eat them when they're still very, very sour. But yeah, so next I'm going to go look for a stink currant, which is actually my favorite wild currant to eat. So next on my ribus list is the stink currant, as I mentioned, and it sounds terrible, but the reason it's called a stink currant is because it smells, I think, amazing. It's like a fruity perfume, and unfortunately you can't really impart this flavor into anything. I've tried, or at least I haven't managed to. Maybe somebody else knows how. But it does have, well, this one doesn't. I've been unable to find very many currants with berries this year, but this one does, when they get berries, have little tiny blue berries. You know, they're the kind of blue of blueberries that it's like a dark brown color with a white kind of powdery coating, and that makes it look blue in the light. So yeah, that's what they are, kind of oblong shaped berries, and the birds love them also. But if you manage to get enough, you can make jam. I've made jam with them before, and it does have a little bit of an aftertaste of this perfumey flavor. It's kind of amazing. So and sometimes they actually have bigger leaves than this, but this is pretty average. It's taller than it looks here because I'm on the edge of a ditch, and so I'm guessing it's about 6 feet tall. They quite often are between about 3 and 10 feet. So yeah, that is a stink currant. Yet another currant. I'm going to take one of these leaves over to my mother's garden so you can do a comparison of 3 different ribes species here. Okay, so I am in my mother's vegetable garden where she has a red currant, and I brought these other leaves from the wild currants here to show you, although this one is starting to shrivel up a bit, the similarities. So as you can see, this leaf here from the stink currant has 7 points, and these from the black gooseberry, the wild black gooseberry, has 5 main pieces, but then it has 2 little ones at the bottom here. I'll put my hand behind it so it's easier to see. Hopefully you can see that. And if we check out one of these, they have what appears to be basically 3. Now if you really look, the bottom one actually has 1, 2, 3 points, so it's still sort of 7 pointed, but I think that's hard to notice. So I wouldn't be counting the points is what I'm saying, but they do have a generally similar shape of leaves. And the reason I'm really here, even though this is a cultivated bush, is because it's the only one I can find with berries. And not only that, but the berries are ridiculous this year. I mean, this is what happens when you get piles and piles of rain as they're growing, I suppose. They suck it all up, and there they are. They're nowhere near ripe. This is a red currant. They'll be red, but if you take a close look, they have stripes like a gooseberry, but then they will ripen up and be totally red and sour and delicious, and my mother makes all kinds of amazing things with them. So that's it. Ribus, both wild and domestic. So next I want to talk about vaccinium, which the most prominent variety that we have around is these red huckleberries. Sometimes you hear in popular culture people talking about huckleberries and they're blue, which is bizarre to me, or it was for a long time, until I found out that across a lot of the United States and in mountainous areas, they're just talking about black huckleberries or mountain huckleberries, which are blue or black. And it's just another type of vaccinium. And they're all related to blueberries also. So yeah, that's a whole variety that we can find. And if you look at the leaves, if you've ever seen a blueberry bush, a cultivated one, they have the same sort of leaves, this sort of alternating roundish leaves. Well, not roundish, I guess they're pointy. How do I describe them? Anyway, with the berries. And right now we have piles of them because of all this rain we've had. They're delicious. Huckleberry pie, I love it. Put them in salads, just eat them. Apparently, indigenous people actually had a kind of rakes that they used that I guess they would have a branch like this and sort of rake their way along. Now I don't have a rake, this is my fingers, and it would pull off the huckleberries. We, in harvesting them, sort of do a similar thing with our fingers over a bowl, and or a wide basket, or even a piece of fabric. And then you get a lot of leaves too, and all you do is roll them around in a metal bowl or something, and all the leaves will stick up on the sides, and especially if it's damp, a damp metal bowl, and the huckleberries will roll out, and then it's like, like sifting the chaff off of grains, but leaves off of huckleberries. Yeah, so that's it, huckleberries. They're everywhere, enjoy them. On to the next type of plant. All right. The next family I want to talk about is Oregon grape. A lot of people know them as Mahonia, and there are all sorts of larger hybrid varieties that people have in their yards for, ornament. But they're wild all over the place. Their berries are delicious. They're very sour actually, but they make wonderful jams, jellies. Most people use jelly, or make jelly rather, because they don't like the seeds. Yeah, you can use them for all kinds of stuff. They have yellow flowers in the springtime, and they're now in June starting to have their green berries. They won't be ripe until the middle of the summer, like end of July, beginning of August usually. And then they'll be blue, like kind of blueberry colors. That kind of dusty white blue look that many berries have. And yeah, as always, if you can beat the birds to them, you can make quite a lot of delicious things with them. Although with adding plenty of sugar, because they are sour, but delicious. So yeah, Oregon grape, and very sharp. Some people mistake them for holly, but they're not a tree. They're nothing like holly. In the deeper rainforest you can find, 6 foot high Oregon grapes. But speaking of that, let's get on to our last berry that I'm going to talk about today, and that is something you will find a lot in the forests, and it can be even taller. Over here, it's a bit of a steep hillside, but let's see if I can make my way over to this salal here. Huckleberry, yet another huckleberry right beside me, although this one has 0 berries. Oh, and here's an evergreen blackberry, my best friends, as I mentioned. Not. Oh, I hate when people say that. I said it. All right. Over here are the salal, and they have this kind of perfumey smell. If you know it, you can smell it before you even get to them. Oh, look at this little guy with the bee right here. So the salal, it is mostly in and around forests. Unlike salmonberries that really like to be in cleared areas, salal is happy to be between the conifers and up on mountain hillsides and under the conifers. You'll find it kind of everywhere there are rainforests around here. And it likes to be on bluffs also. I'm on a bluff right now. And right now it's kind of just beginning to have berries. It still has some flowers. It's yeah, they also become that kind of white dusted blue looking berries later in the summer, and they're very sweet. I mean, gorgeously sweet. They're so delicious. Quite often, I just said they have that white dusted blue color, but it's different than the Oregon grape. The Oregon grape really looks blue. These look more black with sort of shiny blue bits. And yeah, so they're darker, and even can look brown when they're not shiny. And yeah, they're incredibly sweet. They might be as sweet as blackberries, maybe. Really, really sweet. The only thing is they do have a lot of seeds, so I don't like them for things like pies. or jam, but jelly totally, and mostly just eating them fresh. They're just amazing. I think some people eat them dried, and then the seeds are less of an issue. If you're eating them dried, you expect that crunchy, chewy bit, yeah, and as you can see, they're completely loaded. Although the berries are brand new, they'll be 2 or 3 times this size if we get enough rain this summer, and they'll be delicious, and they're everywhere. So compete with the birds a bit and have a few. And yeah, I hope that was enough of our deliciously edible berries. There are poisonous berries around, so please be careful what you're eating. I think most of the edible berries that we have are very easy to distinguish from any of the poisonous ones, but it's always good to be sure before you go eating, and appreciate what we have and what we can eat and what we can look at and all of those things. Happy exploring.